So every once in a while, I like to kind of scope out the Linux landscape, as it were. I like to see what popular culture is saying about Linux. And it's been a minute since I've done that. But I feel like the time is right because LinusTechtips just released a new video about Linux. And I figure we should take a look at it together as a family. Now, a little bit of backstory. Linus kind of has a sordid past with Linux. Here.
What is the point of having a... Oh. Hello?
So you can kind of see that Linus isn't the most experienced Linux user. I'm not trying to talk down to him. His position on Linux has changed quite significantly since I've been watching his channel for, man, like 10 years probably. So with all that said, let's take a look at their video and see what conclusions we come to. All right, let's get right into his video here.
If you know anything about Linux, you probably know how overwhelming it can be choosing the right version or distribution. I mean, look at the comments on this video where a small handful of people are only mildly upset that I didn't pick this one because it's for gaming, or this one because it's more of a stock experience.
I cannot blame Linus for finding these comments annoying. Our community is one full of highly opinionated and often wrong people. Nothing against opinions. I sure have a lot of them and I express them here on the channel. Comments like this, I mean, this is the kind of stuff where it's like, you are not helping anybody make any decisions. You know, my preferred Linux distribution is Manjaro, and Manjaro is widely loved and widely reviled, and I don't quite understand the hate for it. I get comments like this all the time. It's like, why are you using Manjaro? Manjaro's the worst. You just got to ignore them, you know, or call them out like he's doing here.
That's right, friends. Today we are going to be scouring the darkest corners of the internet to find some of the weirdest Linux distros. And while some of them seem like stupid gimmicks,
Suicide Linux isn't actually a distro, though. Suicide Linux is a package that will destroy your distro.
meet LinuxFX. It might look like Windows 11.
Oh, LinuxFX, dude. This distro. Wait a minute. Isn't it KDE? It's Ubuntu. And it runs Android apps. Okay. So are they using like Anbox or whatever?
Welcome to LinuxFX.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of these kind of like distros that are trying to you know, emulate the Windows experience. It's like Windows and Linux are so fundamentally different that even if you have, you know, this bright, flashy KDE theme, it's still not going to be Windows. It's not going to work like Windows. And I think it's misleading to end users who are new to the thing. It just isn't doing new users any favors, making it look like Windows. It really isn't, because it might look like Windows, but it's not going to behave in any way, shape, or form like Windows. People are going to be like, well, where's my drive letters? That's like the number one thing I still, to this day, hear when people are asking me, like, where's my D drive? Where's my X drive? It's like, bro, we don't have those on Linux. Those don't exist. It's an inefficient way to do it. What is this, DOS?
This LinuxFX distro actually has had a lot of issues with basically just rebranding names and stealing IPs and stuff.
Oh.
So they've tried to get around it by making it as similar as possible, but not interact the same way as possible.
So basically what he's saying is it's KDE with a theme, but he doesn't know how to articulate that. I mean, it's not like this distro is going to make their own fork of KDE that behaves like Windows. I mean, that would literally not be feasible to do. I mean, like I said, it might visually look like Windows, but functionally it is not. It's Linux. It's not gonna behave like Windows in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's what he's trying to say here.
It's funny because they go out of their way to add basically what looks like the control panel and then don't make it work like the control panel at all.
I mean, I basically just said that, right? I mean, it's not like they're going to change the program. They literally are just adding a coat of paint. It's like on those episodes of Star Trek where they redress like a bridge set from the movies, and it's like it's clearly the same set as from Star Trek 4, but now it's on the next generation. I don't know exactly who's behind LinuxFX or whatever, but they're not going to have the time or the resources or even the motivation to build an entire desktop environment to make it function like Windows. That's just not going to happen.
Oh, okay, hold on. This one I can interact with. This looks and feels about like the current iteration of the start menu, for better or for worse.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the icons are god awful. Like, those icons are just horrible icons.
You want to know my favorite part? You know how I said that they were kind of getting in trouble for stealing things?
Yeah.
Go change the wallpaper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because this is obviously stolen.
Yeah.
That's their...
Wait, it ships with this?
Yes.
He's like, put it on a face, but I feel like he's upset. Like, yeah, I mean, LTTstore.com, bro. GardinerBryant.com. Get merch like this.
If our first Linux was neutral good, willing to break a couple of eggs to make a freedom omelet, our next two are definitely chaotic evil. Bieber and Hannah Montana Linux, which were built on Puppy Lucid and Ubuntu respectively.
So, I've heard of Bieber, and I've heard of Hannah Montana Linux, and I've even talked about Hannah Montana Linux on the channel once, as a goof. But like, these are so old, and I think when I did my videos, it was like 6 years ago or 5 years ago, something like that. We're in 2024. These are like, I don't even know what kernel versions these are running, but they're probably version 3 or 4, maybe. They're not version 5 at all. I don't know how to spell Bieber. 2019 update. Yikes. Oh yeah, kernel 2.6. Wowzers. That's very old. I get that like our community is full of weirdos, and people who like to make jokes, but like, woof.
When this operating system came out, it was honestly meant as a joke.
Yeah.
You just plug it into someone's computer, you reboot their computer, so the next day they go to work, they have Justin Bieber blasting music, or... I actually like this one over the Bieber. It feels a little bit more fleshed out as a desktop.
I'm not going to call these guys out for like not being Linux users, but this is KDE. It's just an older version of KDE. So like, I don't know what the other one was. I didn't recognize it. Yeah, it looks like it might be KDE as well. I don't know.
Vinux OS, a build for the visually impaired that is based on Ubuntu and features a screen reader to read off what the user clicks on or hovers over.
So just try clicking or hovering over something.
Window.
I just said window.
Oh, okay. Wait. The title of this video is 10 weird versions of Linux that actually exist. But so far, all I've seen is distros that existed. Like, these are all extremely old. I've never even heard of Vinux. Like, that's not like a Linux distro. As far, like, I mean, it probably is, but I mean, I live in this world and I've never seen that before.
As it is right now, it is not very good.
Like, yikes! It's using Ubuntu Unity desktop. Like, that's not a thing anymore. Ubuntu switched over to GNOME like 7 years ago. I can practically guarantee you that whatever we have now is better than that like 10, 11, 12-year-old stuff that they're showing in this video. Like, Vinux, that's not even a thing, guys.
Edubuntu.
Education Linux.
So Linux then. Their mission, as stated on their site, is to bring the freedom of the Linux desktop and the vast library of open source education software to the classroom.
Okay, at least this is running like a modern-ish version of GNOME here.
I played this at work just to test it, and then I went home and played it for about another 30 minutes.
Really? Arcade?
Yep, Arcade Game Works.
These like tucks of math command, these kind of things are... I mean, just look at these buttons, guys. I just don't understand distros like this. It's basically Ubuntu, but it includes a bunch of pre-installed apps. It's like, it's somebody's passion project, but like who's using it? Like, for real. Like, where is this being used?
On to RedStar OS, which...
RedStar OS. Guys, RedStar OS is North Korea's, like, spyware, malicious operating system. Why are we talking about this? Like, all of these distros except for Edubuntu is, like, they're, like, old. They're so old. Like, RedStar OS, let's look that up. Version 4. So their latest release was in 2019. So it's 5 years old at this point.
But has since had 4 major revisions, including updates as recently as 2019. What is RedStar OS, you might ask? Why, it's North Korea's operating system of choice. Turns out Linux is sometimes about the freedom and openness to oppress your citizens. Let's move on to something more positive, shall we? Suicide Linux? You have got to be kidding me. That's a thing?
Yes, sir.
Technically, this is not a distribution like the ones that we've shown so far, but there was no way we were not going to include this.
10 weird Linux versions that actually exist. This isn't a version of Linux, but okay.
Package that can be installed onto your OS that makes it so that if you mess up a command, any command, it immediately wipes your drive. And if you're wondering why this exists, you're not alone. I asked why.
Because we're a bunch of childish nerds.
Fun?
All right, what's the challenge?
All right. I got 3. You're allowed to use Google because you might not know the commands off by heart.
All I'm saying is nobody's using this in production. That's all I'm saying.
Install an application.
Okay.
I want you to create a new folder somewhere. And then I want you to change your time zone.
Yeah, setting a time zone is not the easiest thing to do. But it's like, that's a thing that's very easily done across any desktop environment.
That's where TinyCore comes in. It is a 16 megabyte distribution. Now, of course, a prime use for this is loading everything up the way that you like it and carrying it around on a USB that you can take from computer to computer.
A lot of people actually use these types of OSs for like a POS system.
TinyCore, I don't know when the last release was. Wow, 48 days ago. That's not bad. Okay.
This next one is one you would pretty much never install, but it could be the most relevant one on this list, depending on what you're into. SystemRescue is a Linux that is intended to be run off a USB drive and comes packed with tons of tools to help you diagnose issues with your PC.
Okay, these last two are pretty interesting here. I mean, recovering images is something that you definitely can do with something like SystemRescue.
I'm installing our new distro, or our last one, I guess.
All right, let's go.
We're doing Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
No. Uwu.
I see.
Yeah.
This seems more modern.
Yes. So this again is based off of Ubuntu.
Is this bone stock? It comes with Spotify and Steam and QBitTorrent and all kinds of things.
No, it's not bone stock, and that's why it's just a little bit different.
The distro, dude, if the distro comes with Steam or whatever, Spotify, then that would be bone stock. I don't know what this kid is talking about here.
I am cursed. This is a distro that comes with Steam pre-installed, and I managed to break it simply by trying to launch it.
Steam input devices UDEV rules don't seem to be installed. If you experience issues with gamepads, consider installing Steam devices package using your distribution package manager. See the Steam Flatpak application wiki for more details. Ay, dude. Why would your distribution have Steam and not Steam devices? And why would you install the Flatpak version of Steam? And, like, if you're going to install Steam, it should be, like, the native, like, package, not Flatpak, where it's, like, abstracted and has fewer permissions. I mean, you're going to run into, like, GPU problems. There's performance issues with the Steam Flatpak. So I recommend against doing that. You want to use the native package for your distribution. And you always want to have the Steam devices package installed if you have Steam on your Linux distro. But this is not broken, Linus. There's security things with using human interface devices, but this is not broken. Steam isn't broken here.
This seems like a very complete experience.
Yeah. It even has Thunderbolt in the settings. Thunderbolt 3 support.
Really?
What are you talking about, really? Thunderbolt is available on Any Linux distro, as long as your system supports it. As far as I know, that's the way it works. As long as you have Thunderbolt support in your hardware, then you're gonna have Thunderbolt support in the distro.
This already seems less overwhelming and in some ways more friendly than some of what's out there. Of course, there are a few things.
What a weird take. This seems more friendly than other Linux distros. Like, why? I guess if this was my first experience, I'd be like, wow, this is pretty nice. You know, if that was my first experience with Linux. I don't want to call him out, but like, Linus has not used many Linux distributions. There are many great Linux distributions out there that aren't based on a meme. And I mean, I've never used Ubuntu, but I can guarantee you I never will because of the name alone. It's ridiculous. It's kind of gross to me, honestly.
Of course, there are a few things I would do differently, which, come to think of it, how about we make a distro to call our own?
It's a good idea.
Leave some suggestions down below of what you'd like to see in an LTT distro, and maybe, just maybe, we'll take a crack at Linus Linux.
Linux.
The creator of Linux, his name is Linus, and he named it after himself. So, I mean, what should a LTT distro look like? That's a good question. Definitely, the homepage would have to be set to lttstore.com. Your browser would not be allowed to install AdBlock on it. You'd have to have this as the desktop background, and it would never be changed. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What are people saying here? Linus, I need you to read this comment. Vinux is a very old distro that no one who is blind, like myself, or visually impaired uses anymore. Most distributions are now accessible right out of the box and support Braille displays. That's what I was getting at. Like, this is the state of Linux as I thought it was today. As far as an LTT distro is concerned, as long as you put Emily in charge of it, I think it would be a pretty good distro. And just don't meme. If you're actually going to make an LTT distro, don't meme, just make a good distro and have the backing of Linus Media Group for the distro, like for support and stuff. And I think, you know, you're positioned well to have that be an actually good commercial distro. So, you know, I did have a lot that I complained about in this video, but I actually did find it quite fun and interesting. It's clear that Linus and Elijah live outside of the Linux world, so it's nice to see that outsider's perspective. But also, it means that they got a lot of stuff wrong. I mean, most of these distros, you can count how old they are on two hands, right? Like, they're very old. Linux, never even heard of that, and it doesn't represent accessibility in the modern world, in the Linux world. Haha, Justin Bieber Linux, right? But the TinyCore and the SystemRescue CD were actually pretty good. Decent, I would say. But with that said, I'd love to know your thoughts. How do you feel about this video? Do you enjoy it when Linus talks about this stuff? I feel like when Linus talks about Linux, it brings a lot of attention to the community, and that can be a good thing. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and make sure you get subscribed to stay up to date with all the fun stuff we're doing here on the channel. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.